right, welcome everyone. After a little bit of a hiatus, we are back with the Data Resilience SpectrumCast. So I am your host, Steve Keniston. Hopefully you haven't forgotten about this. I am always joined by my co-host, Randy Arsenault. Hey, Randy.
Steve, welcome back. Good to have you back. Good to have the crew back together.
Great. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
So Steve and I both work in kind of the evangelism / product positioning / portfolio communications group, such as it is. So we're kind of like a SWAT team within the storage brand to do anything and everything related to positioning and kind of external communication in the portfolio to partners, to clients, to press folks, to whoever wants to listen. So we're out telling the story to whoever wants,
guys, right?
Yeah, the outside in guys. Yes, exactly.
And then, as always, joined by our subject matter experts, Trisha Jang. Hey, Trisha.
Hey, Steve. Welcome back.
Thank you. Why don't you give us a quick overview?
Yeah, Trisha Jang. I am a technical evangelist for Spectrum Protect, Spectrum Protect Plus, and CDM. So taking what Steve and Randy do and going a little bit further into product specific.
Randy, I think I heard there, she said she's smarter than us, which I probably agree with.
That's a given.
And Sean Sperry.
My name is Sean Sperry, and I work with Trisha and a whole bunch of people doing enablement for the data protection products for IBM, specifically Spectrum Protect and Spectrum Protect Plus. And I've been doing this, it seems like, since the beginning of time, since they were recording data with chisels and rocks. We would do a backup by, I don't know, I guess trying to make a copy of the rock.
Pour some plaster on it and take a casting of it and store that elsewhere.
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
And I've also done like virtually every other job in computers that you can possibly think of at one time or another during my illustrious career.
Great, thanks, Sean. And I appreciate Randy, Sean, and Trisha are always with us when we do the SpectrumCast. And this week, we have a special guest, Del Hubler. Del, you are the product director. I guess I get confused, but why don't you tell us, what's the difference between product director and the director of the product? I don't understand.
So my official title is Program Director of Product Management for the Spectrum Protect portfolio. Huge mouthful. But that doesn't change what I do, which is really focused on delivering world-class product within the Spectrum Protect portfolio to our clients. And I was a developer on the product for 25 years, product manager for about 7 years now. It's my life. This product is my life, and I love it. And there's so much opportunity. I love being a part of this team, guys.
Well, Del, I say we probably should have had you on the very first one, because I do know you care deeply about this product, about our data protection products. You know a lot about data protection, data resilience, and that's kind of the goal of this entire podcast. One of the things we wanted to do is especially have you on today, because I think what we like to do is talk to clients about things that are coming up, things they need to pay attention to, and especially in our portfolio, it's always changing, right? And you brought up a really interesting topic earlier this week, and we thought, hey, it'd be great to talk about this on a SpectrumCast. There are some changes coming to how clients might back up a NetApp filer. Now, we all know about backing up filers and file systems in large databases, but why don't you tell us a little bit about kind of the history and kind of the issue, and then maybe we'll talk about some of the solutions and solution capabilities.
That sounds great, Steve. Let's do that. So first of all, just to level set everybody, NetApp has a bunch of products. One of their products, of course, enables you to put files in large scales, right? So they have these things called filers. So you can store your data out on these filers, but that data needs protection as well. And backing up large scale filers takes extra special smarts, if you will. You're talking about large millions and millions and billions of files sometimes that take a different sort of architecture to be able to back those up. Now, Spectrum Protect has been backing up NetApp filers for decades, right? And the number of files continues to grow. I think everybody knows that already. In the case of NetApp, Spectrum Protect leverages a special API called SnapDiff to enable us to do incremental forever against the filer. So you can imagine with millions or billions of files, only a very small percentage of those changes every day. Now, using SnapDiff, we can just ask NetApp, hey, what changed from yesterday? It hands us the files, and we back just the files that have changed since yesterday, versus having to scan the entire filer, which could take literally days, maybe even weeks with these huge numbers of filers. So it's a mechanism that NetApp provides to give you a difference between day one and day two, so we can quickly back up the changed files. Now, we've been doing that for quite some time now. The issue here is that starting with a new version of NetApp Ontap, which is, by the way, Ontap is the operating system that runs NetApp filers. NetApp has decided to change their licensing mechanism, so they will no longer allow you to use SnapDiff in this fashion. Now, SnapDiff will still be there, but it's for a different use case, and we'll get into that. Now, NetApp did document this in what they call their product communiques, and it's listed as CPC 00352, and we will include a link to this, as you can see on the screen. But essentially, they explained why they did this and what clients can do to continue backing up their NetApp filers.
Oh, great. That was a great overview. Thank you very much for helping us to understand that. So Trish and Sean, you guys are in the field quite often. You probably see a lot of folks backing up filers, specifically NetApp filers. You guys obviously see folks taking advantage of SnapDiff and utilizing SnapDiff?
Yeah, SnapDiff is critical when we were talking about in-series devices or NetApp devices, but we do have other ways that we can back up these devices, and I'm sure Del will talk about it. One of them is just good old NDMP. Yeah, I was on that one. Okay, good old NDMP.
Great.
Okay.
Great. So before we dive into kind of the different things that folks are doing, Del, why don't you, again, I think we have an image here to kind of show everyone that talks a little bit about how folks can kind of back up large filers today.
Well, but before we do that, Del, let me ask you this question. Let's assume that a lot of people or some people miss that notice that you laid out, right? And of course, I spend my whole day reading these things, but maybe some other people don't. And they decide to go ahead and upgrade the version of ONTAP to the version where this is not supported. What happens at that point? Do they just stop working? Do they have to back it off? What's the consequences of that, if we know?
Well, so what will happen is they upgrade their filer, the next day rolls around, the schedule hits, it tries to run the backup, it immediately will fail.
Okay.
So they will now be compromised on their data. It will not run a backup.
Right. And and hopefully, I mean, with an upgrade like that, hopefully people are testing it and testing their backups before they would put in such an upgrade. But you know as well as I do that a lot of people don't necessarily do that, right?
You're right.
So that would be a bad thing to happen, shall we say.
And the other question is this just SnapDiff or is this also SnapMirror to tape?
No, it's just SnapDiff.
Okay, now why don't we kind of take a step back and kind of just think about the ways people protect filers today, backing up their file systems. Let's talk about maybe a little bit in depth of kind of what's going to be taken away, and then after that, we'll kind of talk amongst ourselves. We'll go into some of the solutions. How's that?
Okay, so today to back up filers, NetApp filers, IBM Spectrum Protect offers a number of different methods. Each of these methods has their own advantages and or disadvantages. And in some case, clients are using two of these methods to have double sorts of protections for their filers. So let's talk about those methods. They're divided up into two different categories, NDMP-based and file-based. Now, NDMP itself has two different flavors, straight NDMP, which is a complete volume-based backup, right? Typically written out the file or VTL, right? And then we have SnapMirror to tape. And that's a file system-based backup leveraging blocks using the NDMP protocol. So those two methods are effectively going after the complete filer, either at the volume base or at the block level. The second method, which is file-based, which effectively says, I'm going to mount up the filer, I'm going to access it with a backup archive client, file level backup client, and I'm going to go after it, right? You can have two methods here. One is straight mount, just like mounting something up and then accessing the file, reading the file up off of it and backing it up, or file-based with SnapDiff, which is I'm going to do that same mount, but this time I'm going to ask SnapDiff what's changed. And so the one that's going away with the new version of NetApp Ontap coming out later in 2021 is the one in red, which is the SnapDiff assisted backup at the file level.
Great. No, that's a good overview, Del. Thanks for sharing that. And then we get to kind of my favorite part, right? And this is where the rubber meets the road is, what do we think the impact is, and what do we think the impact is to clients?
That's a great question, Steve. So number one, we're trying to get this information out to as many people as possible. We really want to make sure that when customers who choose to upgrade are aware of the options. So let's talk specifically about the impact to the customers. Number one, if customers choose to upgrade to this version of ONTAP, they're going to have to start a new backup of the entire filer. Now, from this perspective, for those that are leveraging SnapDiff, as mentioned before, the backup will just fall over and fail. It will just fail because what will happen is we'll try to make a call to those SnapDiff APIs and the backup will fail. So therefore, the filer will not be able to be backed up using the SnapDiff assisted backup. So if you choose to do the upgrade, you need to select one of the other methods to back up to make sure your data is protected. If you choose not to upgrade because for a number of different reasons, but first of all, you want to decide, well, hey, is NetApp the right thing for me? If they're making it more difficult to do a backup at the file level, or maybe I haven't chosen which of the other backup methods I want to choose. If you choose not to upgrade, you can still use Spectrum Protect SnapDiff to do that backup until the end of support for that version of ONTAP. So again, these versions of ONTAP are supported out until 2023 and 2024 in some cases. So for clients that do not upgrade, they'll be able to continue doing their backups just as they did prior. NetApp is not ending support for SnapDiff for those versions of the current versions of ONTAP. And then the other thing to note is customers may ask, well, hey, I've got all this data I've been backing up for literally years of my filer. What happens when I just upgrade to the new version of ONTAP and I start doing NDMP backup? Can I still get access to my old file level backup data? And the answer is yes. This change does not affect restoring previously ingested backup data. So if Tricia has a file that was backed up a year ago, you still will be able to get access to your file, access to your data, and do the restore. So it does not affect restore operations at all for any data that was backed up with SnapDiff.
And now, right, now we understand what's coming. We understand the impact to the clients and what they're going to need to do. The next step is, okay, how do we actually kind of solve for this problem? What do we have out there to help customers kind of think about, okay, I'm gonna upgrade my filer. What should be some of the next steps?
Yeah, excellent point. Excellent question, Steve. So number one is our job is the most important job for us is to make sure your data is protected, period, right? So wherever that data sits, we want to protect it. Now, as you mentioned, there's a few different options that you can choose on backing up your data, right? Well, one thing you could do is we talked about the different methods of backing up using the NetApp filer that are still available, but another option could be that, hey, I decide I maybe want to get off the NetApp platform and use a different storage platform for your files. For example, SpectrumScale, a really great filer backup mechanism that has deep integration with Spectrum Protect. But the idea is that one option is certainly to be able to change your storage platform so that you can continue doing integrated backups. The second option is we have some great partners out there, such as General Storage, that have integrated with Spectrum Protect for many years. One is called DSM ISI Mags, kind of a funny name, but it's amazing technology. They do incremental file level backups of NAS filers, NetApp included, as well as Isilon and any other filer, by effectively creating multi-stream backups to a Spectrum Protect server. So here's a solution that enables you to do file level backups in a highly efficient, highly parallel way to a Spectrum Protect server.
You know, and this was going to be my tool tip of the day. I think Dell's been rating my toolbox, but this is a really great point. And I just want to emphasize that we've got so many great partners and innovators.
It's not official until you put the hat on.
So,
Thank you.
official now.
Okay, good.
But we have
Continue,
tons
please.
of really great folks out there who are using our tools, our APIs, our command lines to do this type of really innovative work on making what we do even better. So I'm glad that Dell brought this up.
Yeah, and I mean, that's one of the big advantages of having a product as mature and as widely used as the Protect family. There's a whole very vibrant ecosystem built around it. And then, you know, we've talked to a lot of the partners on the SpectrumCast, or not a lot, but some of them. And the additive value proposition story is great. And this is another example. So it's very cool.
Yeah, and we only resell a subset of those partners, but if you just go out and you look at some of the forums and you just Google it, you'll see that we've got tons of really smart, innovative solutions using our product and making it even more effective for those niche needs.
So we've got the let's pick someone new, a new storage platform. Hopefully you pick IBM. We like that story, but that's not always easy for clients to do. We've got to use some of our partners, and especially the DSMI SI solution. I always kind of screwed that's a long acronym, but a lot of clients might ask, "Hey, is there anything on the roadmap to kind of identify or address this?" What do we say to that?
Yeah, absolutely. Good question, Steve. So number one, as I mentioned, there are other methods to back up that filer with Spectrum Protect, but we're also looking at NetApp's strategic shift to what they call SnapMirror to cloud. And this is another way to back up the NetApp filer. The difference here is that it gets stored in NetApp format. So in this case, they're effectively creating a complete snapshot of their NetApp filer and storing it to object storage. So you can point it at Amazon or IBM Cloud Object Storage, and it does a block level incremental forever against their filer. So it's an efficient way to do the backup. And we have actually started looking at this and investigating this to enable us to offer that as an additional option using Spectrum Protect if a client wants to leverage that, the new mechanism of SnapMirror to cloud.
Great, good to know. So I think the other thing we want to do is share with our customers. We have a number of different set of reference capabilities that folks can take advantage of or leverage if they want to investigate this a little bit more before making that strategic leap, I would assume, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So, as you can see on the screen here, we have a number of things that you should really check out, right? It really gives you a comprehensive view on what are supported versions of NetApp for SnapDiff with Spectrum Protect. That way you sort of know, hey, what do I need to do from a Spectrum Protect perspective? We also wrote up a very specific tech note on Spectrum Protect and SnapDiff and what a customer needs to do. So as a follow-on, if you're ever wondering, well, gosh, I can't find Steve's webcast, where can I go find this information? We have it out there. In fact, if you Google SnapDiff and Spectrum Protect, it actually is one of the top hits already. It's already been looked at quite a few times. And then the end of support dates, really important for customers that are NetApp customers and they want to know, hey, you know what, I'm going to stay on this version of NetApp because I love SnapDiff backup with Spectrum Protect. I just want to keep doing it until my NetApp device expires and I go to scale or whatever the answer is. You'll still continue to use that. We've got the link here for you to go check out those dates. And then we also include the communique where NetApp explains very deeply in very, very technical detail on why they made this change and how it affects backing up NetApp filers moving forward.
Great, great. And then Tricia, I think Dell even went a step further and added to your toolbox a whole bunch of references that you could look up for, I'll get it right, DSMISI, if you wanted to kind of implement or put that into your environment. And we'll have those listed here on the screen for you as well, along with some contact folks, some links that dive into some of the product. You can look and see if that's of value to you. So great overview, Del. I appreciate you taking us through this because, as always, our clients are faced, not just our customers, but all customers are faced with a lot of different challenges when it comes to data protection. This is just one of them. And, another one of those many challenges is let's take a spin on Randy's wheel of misfortune. And Randy, what do you got for us this week?
Oh, well, it's going to be no surprise, right? So, and interestingly, I did in fact, go into the wheel of misfortune, and of course, the first thing that comes up is, well, the first and second thing that comes up is the cyber attack on the Centennial pipeline. So, this is not just a very economically impactful, and disruptive event, but it also portends kind of bad things to come potentially. So there's a lot of concern. And by the way, this was by all accounts undertaken not by a state-sponsored, agency or organization, but as just a private group of, ransomware hackers, basically, who were able to execute this attack that could become one of the most economically impactful or expensive in the entire, in history. So, this was a dramatic event. It's, raising all kinds of red flags because we've tended to look at, and of course, right on the heels of the SolarWinds event, which was targeted more at, kind of the government agencies and some private industry. This is focused squarely on physical infrastructure, and that's always a big concern, right? Because obviously you can target agencies and target businesses and you can impact their bottom line or their ability to operate efficiently. But when you start attacking, base infrastructure, whether it's, natural resources or power distribution or whatever, that affects, millions, hundreds of millions of people potentially. So this is a huge issue. Now, we've talked a lot about this actually, and we've talked a lot about ways that data protection and sort of the ability to have multiple backups and multiple different modalities can help with recovery and help reduce the vulnerability for things like ransomware attacks like this. That's going to continue to be the case, obviously, to an even greater degree. And this is just the latest example of why that's so critically important. And I think if a positive can be taken from this, it's that, everyone is now taking this very seriously. Whereas even 5 years ago, you could argue that these kinds of large scale disruptions were viewed as, relatively rare, and they weren't considered to be super commonplace. Well, those days are gone. They're now very commonplace. The risk is very high. The mitigation strategies are getting harder and more complicated and more expensive. So all these different organizations and think tanks and agencies, and this one happens to be the World Economic Forum, is devising a set of best practices, and it's all pretty familiar for those of us who have been talking about the NIST framework and data protection and ease of recovery for years now. But this is just the latest example of how real and how important and how really disruptive these events can be. So it's incumbent upon us, and I think we are part of that broader discussion around the importance of data protection and having backups and multi-generational backups to prevent or recover from situations like this. So while we don't always necessarily get that heavily involved in the prevention or detection side, we're very actively involved in the recovery side, right? So, and the subject matter expertise, on this panel here, I think is a wellspring of that. So, scary stuff. Hopefully we can help further the conversation and the dialogue around how to prevent these from happening, and when they do happen, how to mitigate and recover as efficiently as possible. So,
Yeah, Randy, if I may,
sure.
You talked about a case here that obviously we all see on our front page of our newspaper, but there's also other cases you don't read, right? I had a client come up to me, and they came up to me and said, Del, I just want to thank you and IBM. And I'm like, why? Because usually they come at a product manager and say, when can I have a feature X, right? But they wanted to come up and thank me. And, of course, it's always nice to hear that. And I said, well, tell me a little bit more. Why do you want to thank me? They were a business partner. One of their clients had been completely wiped out by ransomware. All of their live production data, all of their backup servers running on Windows were wiped out. Everything was wiped out. The only thing that they had was Spectrum Protect data on tape. And they said, we got it on a Friday evening. The business was back up and operational by Sunday night. And they said this company would have been out of business. Now they were a smaller company, but the idea was it just was a full front to back complete restore of this company. And they said they would have been out of business without Spectrum Protect. And that's why I do this job, right? Is because I like to have so it was great.
That's pretty satisfying. And it really is, especially actually for smaller companies, these events pose an existential threat to their business. It's not just inconvenient. We were in, I don't know, I've lost track, but I think it was Prague where we had the last, or Vegas, I don't know, the last TechU, and we had a roundtable, and one of the customers, was on, or one of the partners was sharing an experience like that, where they had a small customer who had an event like that. And the customer said the same thing you just said, Del. Basically, without this capability, my business wouldn't exist, right? It was that much of a threat to them. So that's pretty cool to hear.
And if we take it to the next level, one of the things that is the scariest thing about the incident that you just pulled up, Randy, is I happened to be making breakfast yesterday, listening to CNN, and they had a cyber expert on the panel. And he specifically called out the fact that these cyber criminals are attacking, the primary production data, the transactional data. They're also attacking the backup data. And I started thinking about, geez, you can't even get the answers that you guys had heard from the business partners if your backup data is now infected, right? So, I mean, it goes a long way to a lot of the things that we're talking about, both here as well as the SpectrumCast we had with Juan Carlo about the CRAD and making sure that you're keeping X number of copies because this can happen at any particular time and that you may not know. I mean, these things are just critically important for the ability to be able to get back up and running.
And, long live tape and physical air gapping.
We talk about, the beer lines and the soccer games being hit by malware, and we show those fun cases, but this is serious, and it really does go back to that 3-2-1 where you're keeping those copies. And back to Dell's point, this person had a copy on tape which had not been impacted and was able to get up and running.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think the sad fact is this is not getting any better. It's only going to get worse, right? These people who are perpetrating these crimes are in it for profit. And it is a profitable business. It's a scalable business. They're taking the profits that they're making from them and reinvesting it in better ways to attack in order to make more profit. So small or large.
Also, what about the politics behind it? There's that whole.
Yeah, a lot of it is state-sponsored terrorism as well. I mean, let's be honest. This is the new warfare. Essentially, this is a big element of contemporary warfare. So yeah, I mean, it's it's scary stuff. I mean, the one thing I do often say, and I've said it a lot in these sessions, is IBM as an entity has a very strong point of view and a very loud voice in security and cybersecurity and cyber threat prevention, and we've been doing it for a long time. I mean, we've staked out a leadership position here for a long time, and that's comforting, I guess, in a way. We're obviously still going to have problems like this, and we're never going to be able to mitigate all of them, but it is good to know that we are contributing to this defense posture against cyber attacks in a pretty significant way across IBM. So
I have a new name for our product. Weapon of mass reconstruction. What do you think?
Hold on,
right?
I got to call my patent attorney.
Do it.
Get right back to you.
Quick, call the trademark people.
Yeah, I like it.
Randy, thank you again very much for paying attention to these things, and it kind of brings home and brings to light what we have here. And Del, I can't thank you enough for joining the podcast and laying out kind of what's coming down the pike. I think that's important for our customers to understand, and kind of things they can think about moving into the future. And Sean and Tricia, thanks for sharing kind of what you're seeing out there in the space, and kind of
we need to have the Godfather of Protect on again. Like
that's Del.
With his weapons of mass reconstruction.
I love that.
Yes.
Team, thank you all very, very much. And we look forward to seeing you again next week. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.